There's always something you can make in the extreme to get free energy out of a circuit, although in some cases it may be theoretically impossible, such as raising the mutual inductance above unity, but in other cases it may simply be impractical, but not impossible from a theoretical standpoint. And I'm thinking of the situation of a transformer in which the ratio of turns between the primary and the secondary becomes extreme, so extreme that the transformer can now produce over unity. In fact, it'll explode, even though the mutual inductance between the two coils might be 0.4 or far less. The more you extreme, I was told on Wikipedia by somebody, you can't do that. You can't have extreme difference, or I was told somewhere, you can't have extreme differences in the self-inductance between two coils on a transformer because they won't be able to couple. You won't have any mutual coupling to speak of to be of any use. But who said I'm trying to transfer power? In fact, we apply voltage to a transformer to make sure it does not blow up. Because if the disparity between the self-inductances of the two coils on a transformer is made large enough, and you get two of these transformers with the same disparity, but electrically connected, turned around, so that the primary is the small one on one, and the primary on the other is the larger of the two coils. Now you get a situation where the whole thing can blow up. Even though, you're not giving it any energy to speak of, 1 microvolt. And yet it goes to infinity within a few milliseconds. Why is that? Where did it get its energy from? Well, the same way I did all my other gimmicks and tricks of the trade, so to speak, of getting a circuit to blow up, but always under low voltage conditions. So, when we have a disparity, how do we do it? Well, we apply voltage to the coils so that it won't blow up. Now, in a Tesla coil, a so-called modern-day conventional wisdom Tesla coil, the primary is copper tubing, and it's wrapped a few times around the secondary, which is thin magnetic wire, enameled magnetic wire, wrapped around an air core. Now, it's true that secondary is an open coil, whereas the primary is not. But the primary is low inductance, copper tubing. Just, 10 turns or less around the base air section, if the secondary is pointing up in a vertical, and spaced far enough away that the mutual inductance between the two is not that great. So it's encouraging not magnetic transfer, not transfer of current, but transfer of voltage. Because at a distance, you're not going to get a whole lot of magnetic coupling to transfer electromagnetism. You're going to get a dielectric coupling to transfer the dielectric force through mutual capacitance. Well, why does it matter? If you're not trying to transfer anyway, you just want the damn thing to explode with energy. So that's what I'm looking at. The very argument that was used against me for saying, that's not practical because the magnetic coupling is going to be so low if you make the small coils too small and the large coil too large with respect to each other. Well, that's perfect. That creates instability. And I augment that by giving it low voltage in the first, in addition thereto. And I've really made it unstable. All in the direction of it exploding. Where did all that energy come from? Conservation of energy? I'm not even dealing with a spark gap, which by itself is already questionable in its ability or lack of ability to fulfill conservation of energy. But here we've got a transformer situation. The magnetic coupling between the two coils is ridiculously low. The disparity in size between them is in the extreme. In fact, it makes me think of the Amman brothers. The Amman brothers did something interesting. They turned their transformer inside out. They had a disparity between the two inductances because the copper tubing, the straight copper tubing on the inside of the barrel-shaped iron coil had very low inductance. Meanwhile, the barrel-shaped iron coil shorted to itself because they used bare iron wire. And so, for all intents and purposes, it was sheet metal, a sheet of iron, which they inexpensively wound with iron wire rather than getting sheet metal. And it was effectively a single turn with a very large girth. The girth in terms of the thickness of the how many layers of winding, how thick was that drum, and how long was it? Given a certain square area to the so-called single turn. And then it's to compensate probably for its resistance, which is 6 times greater than copper. But unlike copper, its property of resistance and its property of magnetic remanence makes it possible for iron to put the phases of electricity back together again and make it usable. But the copper is highly reactive. And being that that's in the center where the magnetism is going to concentrate itself, and it's the small self-inductance by comparison to the barrel-shaped iron coil, that could be a very interesting situation. It could be nothing more than the fact or the possibility that the Amman brothers was simply harnessing this property of overunity when the voltage input is low, so they called it a cosmic inductant, atmospheric cosmic generator, or atmospheric cosmic generator. Well, yeah, because they gave it no more than 1 microvolt from the environment. That's what the 2 spheres are, a grounded aerial. And then they have this disparity between the primary and secondary, and then they have very low self-inductance of the copper tube because they don't coil it. They just have, maybe they do a bend in the middle and it goes down, or maybe it's just 2 straight lengths that don't even connect, So you have a double primary on the inside of this thing. Or maybe there's a spark gap between the 2 ends at the ends opposite the spheres. Or maybe a spark gap, or maybe there's a capacitor, a Leyden jar. Who knows? It's all hidden away, tucked inside the barrel-shaped iron coil. Or maybe both, a Leyden jar and a spark gap. That's my guess. It has been for some time because I simulated it, and it's very provocative. But I couldn't simulate beyond that. So this this iron barrel shape changes things. It may put the brakes on the thing, act as a C magnet to put the brake, C magnet and electromechanical watt-hour meter that prevents the aluminum disc from spinning out of our control. Its RPM accelerating to infinite oblivion. That's literally what I read in Meterman's Handbook from 1912 concerning the I-10 General Electric electromechanical watt-hour meter, which I own both, so long as I can hold on to these things in my storage. The copy of the book and a piece of that little piece of history, that 2 pieces of history, that electromechanical watt-hour meter. And it made it very interesting. Here was an overunity device in which they had to use iron, a permanent magnet, in the form of a permanent magnet, to prevent overunity in the meter. So that might be the purpose of the iron, or they may have a permanent magnet inside. and it's magnetizing the barrel-shaped iron coil to put the brakes on the thing so it doesn't explode, and to serve as a cross interference. So if the coil and the tubes have their magnetic fields oriented vertically, then you could put a permanent magnet on in the interior on a horizontal level with the Earth's horizontal plane and perpendicular to what's going on elsewhere between the iron coil and the copper tubing, to create an interesting effect. And charge up the iron coil, for that matter, with the energy from the permanent magnet. And then the copper can react off of that using frequencies that it picks up, receives from plants and the earth, putting out various frequencies at 1 microvolt of voltage. So it begins to look like an interesting situation that might even be doable. That's not the entirety of the thing. I think it's a little more involved than that. But in terms of the principles, what principle is it operating under? What's the governing principle? In addition, regardless of the subsidiary principles, it might just be that disparity between the one coil and another in a transformer situation, extremely enough, and low voltage so as not to suppress the overreactance of that disparity, and you get an explosive situation that's regulated by the presence of the iron, the massive presence of the iron, and possibly a permanent magnet to go along with it, or the other way around, the permanent magnet and the massive amount of iron to supplement the functionality of the permanent magnet, the function. So a lot of guesses and speculations, but it it starts making realistic sense, and it's not obtuse or arcane. It's just something nobody looks at not because it's theoretically impossible to build a transformer of a great disparity between the two coils, but because it's impractical. So I'm not violating any electrodynamic theory by proposing the idea. It only violates the pragmatism of how do you do it? How do you go about doing it? Well, maybe the Amman brothers figured it out, and they made it practical and buildable. Maybe that's all their devices is operating on, is a disparity between two self-inductances in a mutual inductance situation, and everything else is subsidiary. Because I was very depressed yesterday by trying to become very conventionally down-to-earth, grounded in conventional wisdom and conventional testimony of personal experience among electrical engineers that, over-unity is not possible, and thus will continue to believe in the conservation of energy that physics espouses. Well, there was a little kind of, I won't call it a voice, but a hunch that I don't need to do anything theoretically illegal in electrodynamic theory. And then I thought about it, and, I closed my eyes and practically meditated on it, and it came to me. What about mutual inductance? Why don't I give that a try? Or not mutual inductance, excuse me. The balance between the two coils in a transformer. And lo and behold, I kept, I already had a circuit I was playing with. I think it's version 7 in my Lockridge Unleashed volume. Not the mixed load 13 different versions, but the 7 variations that I was trying to stick to Lockridge. And the last one was the one that came to me. I worked it out on paper. Well, actually in my head, and then I drew it on cardboard. The inside of it was actually a mailer that I got. I didn't throw away the mailer. How to try to replicate the Lockridge device as closely as possible. And I didn't do a very good job because I forgot, or I overlooked. I didn't really, you have to listen, to people several times before you get it, right? So I had to listen to the Bedini interview another time, and there was more information. My brain skipped over that. So it's not exactly the way that he describes in his interview, but it was according to the initial couple of run-throughs that I had made of listening to his interview. So I thought I was doing a better job than just coming up with whatever. But the challenge was coming up with a trifilar coil when Paul Falstad does not allow that. A trifilar mutual inductance, forget it. A lumped inductor, So I came up with my best estimate alternative was to have two transformers. And in order to do it, I had to make them different in their self-inductances. 2-to-1 and 1-to-2. And so I played with that. I made it 20, instead of 2-to-1, I made it 20-to-1 and 1-to-20. And then I made 200-to-1 and 1-to-200. Now, of course, that's not the way you put it into Paul Falstad's simulator. You don't say 1-to-20, or 1-to-2, I should say. You say 0.5-to-1. So that's what I dealt with. And numerically, it's different, but proportionally, it's the same. So I just kept playing with that until the two something or other got to be very big. I think it was 2e to the 8, and the other was 2e to the negative 8. And that exploded on me. So then I backed away to 2e to the 7. No, I backed away to 1e to the 7, and then the reciprocal of that, whatever that is. I think it's 5e to the negative 8, maybe? I don't know, 7, 8, whatever. And it did not explode. And then I kept going in between, toggling, up and down. And yeah, I'm finding that it basically wants to just explode. It doesn't want to find some nice sweet spot where it explodes slowly. It just wants to explode suddenly, or not at all. But I am managing to slow down the explosion process, so I think I will be able to find a sweet spot. But of course, it'll be so... That'll be arcane, is the fine-tuning the disparity between the two coils. Be that as it may, it'll probably be possible. I just gave up after a while and took a break. I was kind of tired of... Because, doing things on a cell phone, doing Paul Falstad's simulator on a cell phone is not easy. It takes a little extra work. But it prompts me to make this recording, because I can see definitely now it is theoretically possible, even though it may be impractical to build it, it's theoretically possible not to violate any law or rule or equation or whatever you want to call it, rule of thumb of electrodynamic theory, electrical engineering theory, or physics for that matter. Not violate, and yet conservation is not upheld. Oops. Now, where is time in all of this? I mean, I'm not changing the time interval. I settled on 9 microseconds because I have mechanical switches in that version 7 circuit from Lockridge Unleashed. And I wanted to be able to see the mechanical switches open and close. Because if they don't, I don't have any assurance that the circuit is operating properly. I've always had my doubts about that. You can assume that maybe, it just can't graph it, but it's happening. If I don't see it, I don't trust it. So that's been my view all along. Whether or not it's true or not, but it might be true. So I found that 90 microseconds was just the ideal time interval to make sure that both mechanical switches opened and closed most of the time, and because they were going at different rates, that didn't help matters. And so long as I could see that, and I could be assured, okay, so things are going along okay. And 90 microseconds ain't a lot faster, and it's not a lot slower, so it's kind of in there in the middle. Anywho, so this is very interesting because it doesn't violate anything, yet it violates conservation of energy. And had I thought of this, I would have put it in my provisional patent of 2019, but I didn't. All I could think of was spark gaps. They violate conservation of energy, and nobody bothers to explain why that is. So, but I did that under 32-bit microcap 12. So that's questionable, because I think I might have gotten false positives on that experiment. Now, Paul Falstad's simulator might be a 32-bit oriented piece of software, which means it too would be suspect. Oh dear. Now that's a question to pose to Paul Falstad. Does it matter? Is it neutral with regard to bit registers? I know in JavaScript and in Java they have a limit, a digital limit, and I don't know if it's the same as a 32-bit register limit or not. I bet somebody has answered that question on the internet somewhere. I think I'm going to look that up, because now I'm curious. It's a certain set limit to computer software, but no, it can't be, can it? The whole point of making a computer with more bits in the register is to expand that limit. So maybe, yeah, but see, it all depends upon whether or not the software takes advantage of it. Or the language, the software language, right. So how does the software language define, I think, what do they call it? Double floating point, I think it's called. Because I know Paul Falstad uses that. So that would be the question, is what impact does the size of a computer's register have on double floating point? Okay.